Okay, so we're going to interrupt spooky season reviews for a second to talk about a movie that I have been meaning to discuss for some time. This was a request. I was also requested to discuss this movie. And so today felt like a good day to get that discussion up and out. I needed some time to formulate my thoughts and figure out what I was going to say about this movie that's getting a lot of praise right now. If you know anything about this movie, you've been hearing a lot about the astronomical compliments, astronomical level of compliments this movie is getting. If you've seen it, you're aware. If you've been hearing anything about it, you know a little bit about that. But so I figured it was time to put my 2 cents into the conversation before we get too deep into spooky season, because there's a ton of movies on the way in that area. Figured it was time to get this one out. So with that, let us discuss one battle after another. Let's do it. So this is Paul Thomas Anderson's 10th feature film. It stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Benicio del Toro, Sean Penn, Tiana Taylor, Jason Finity, Regina Hall, and a bunch of other people, wonderful supporting actors to round out the proceedings. Off the top, I'll say right now, this movie is good. It's very good. If you haven't seen it, it's worth a look. So you have an official recommendation from me. If you haven't seen it, consider checking it out because it's pretty good. Having said that, I don't know personally. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I don't know personally that it's on the level of the praise it's getting. It's getting just supremely like stratospheric levels of praise, and I just personally don't know that it fully deserves that. But that's just me. Not to say it's not great, because again, I think it's very well made. It's well shot, supremely well shot, well acted, well written, and just well presented. But what's this movie about? If you read anything about it, you hear anything about it from people like me or anyone else who's talking about the movie, you're going to hear a lot about it being about revolution, which is, I don't know if the film is actually about that. Yes, revolution is a huge piece of this movie, and it's a thread that runs throughout the film. However, this is really about a father and daughter. This is about Bob, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, who is a former revolutionary, at least at the time in the film where things really get rolling. He's a former revolutionary who's very rusty. He's been out of the game for a while. He's got a 16-year-old daughter who he's been raising on his own. And they've been sort of off the grid, living a life of constant vigilance. They've been on watch since Willa was a baby. And now she's a teenager. She's in high school. She's in self-defense classes. And so she's just, she's living a life that is very aware of potential threats. Bob has an old enemy in the form of Captain Colonel Stephen Lockjaw, played by Sean Penn, who destroys this role. He's fantastic. When he resurfaces after 15 or 16 years and Willa goes missing, Bob has to then go on the run and figure out a way to get his daughter back. That's the heart of this movie. Surrounding that, though, as I mentioned before, this is a story that deals with revolution. Bob, or his real name Pat, was a part of a group called the French 75. They are revolutionaries who are going around righting the wrongs, and you find things dealing with immigrants who are having been arrested, or probably held in detention centers. They're the group that's going to go and liberate them. You have laws dealing with abortion that are sort of that are ruled unfavorably for women. You have the French 75 going out and going to address that in the form of bombs and whatever chaos they can create to send a message to the powers that be. The French 75 is going to be responsible for that. The focal members of this group, the people who we spend more time around, particularly in the first act of the film, are led by Tiana Taylor, who plays Perfidia Beverly Hills. She is the love interest for Leonardo DiCaprio's Pat, or Ghetto Pat, And the two of them obviously are romantically linked, and they have a child who is Willa, who we get to know. But Teyana Taylor is the driving force for much of the first act of this film. And she's incendiary. She's got a lot of fire, and she's just smoldering. She's got a lot of energy, and she essentially owns a good section of this movie. We're presented with this in a way that you don't even think twice. Then now Leonardo DiCaprio is built as he's the face of this movie. He's the main character. And yet the movie is not afraid to allow characters like Perfidia or like Willa or, Sean Penn for that matter, anyone else that's not Leonardo DiCaprio to shine. Benicio del Toro has a wonderful role in this movie, and he gets time to like shine properly, and just very good. And at the same time, Leonardo DiCaprio does, he turns in a expectedly strong performance. It's not a surprise. He's very good in this movie. And, but everyone else comes to play too, and they also deliver really strong performances. You have people like Tony Goldwyn, who seems super relaxed in this movie. Now, if you know anything about Tony Goldwyn, you've seen Ghost. Tony Goldwyn is the main deal in that movie. If you're someone who's, 80s kid, 80s, 90s kid, you've seen Ghost, and you probably hated Tony Goldwyn for much of your life. And if you've seen Scandal, you probably didn't have a nice opinion of him either. I've been watching, I'm a Law and Order fan. I watch all the different iterations of Law and Order, and if you don't know, Tony Goldwyn is a series regular on the Mothership show, the original Law and Order. He's good. He's expectedly good as he's in everything, but for some reason, watching him in this movie, he feels much less stilted than he does on Law and Order to me. There are moments on Law and Order he feels it's fine, but some of it feels like he's still trying to find his groove a little bit, and that's just maybe because they use the weird take or whatever. I don't know what it is, but in this movie, he feels super relaxed, super comfortable, and it was actually funny to see him in this movie. Not in a negative way. It was kind of cool. Oh, Tony Goldwyn, that's a guy. Look at him. He's just like he fits right into this weird group of the Christmas adventures. Other good things about this movie. There's a lot of talk about the cinematography. It is great. There's a lot of great shots in this movie. And my understanding is that Paul Thomas Anderson and Michael Bauman, who worked with him on a few previous movies, were responsible for the cinematography. There's some really cool just camera moves, cool tracking shots. Like there's really cool tracking shots. There's been a lot of conversation about things like the car chase, or probably two car chases in this film, how they're shot, how uniquely done they are. The camera's doing all kinds of different things. It's putting you in places where you feel like you are the car driving, driving through the streets and driving on these hills and stuff. And also just from a kinetic perspective, the energy is very there. It's very alive. It feels to me almost like something like you would see in like a race car movie, like F1, or oddly though, it doesn't feel like it could fit in a movie like this, but it works. It's not a race car movie, but those chase scenes, the car chases feel like they are that. They certainly have an energy that are reminiscent of something like Days of Thunder or Need for Speed, Fast and Furious, whatever. It's weird, but it works. Also, the climactic car chase is probably the one that stands out for me. On those hills, the way it's shot, the use of location, the location on its own is great, but then how the film utilizes the location does a lot to amp up the tension in that scene and the suspense in that scene, because you can't see necessarily what's ahead of you when you have your road dips this way and you're driving down the decline. When you're coming up, you don't know exactly what's ahead of you, what's over that next hill. And it's really crazy. Very well done, very well shot from the inside of it, from a distance. There's a lot of great wide shots of it. It's very well captured. So the cinematography is definitely strong. I mentioned earlier the acting is very sound. Teyana Taylor is fantastic in this movie. It's a shame look, the story is what the story is, so it's a shame she's not around longer. But for the time she is, she really makes you pay attention to her, and you remember her presence. She's super like saucy and has such a commanding presence. Of course I have to say something about the scene where she is very pregnant. and she's firing off an automatic weapon. There's something so powerful about the image of that. A woman who is very much in her full sort of womanhood. She's very, very pregnant, and there's a power in that, carrying a life, and then holding in your hands another form of power that has the power to end a life. It's something so lyrical and oddly poetic that this image of this black woman who is just fully in her power and then holding another device of power. The film, they were smart, and the marketing team was smart to utilize that image in the marketing. They knew they had something. And the film was also smart to just have us witness that for however many, 10 seconds, however long it plays. It's not a long time, but boy, is it a powerful image. There's something so electric and very charged about that image. There's probably a lot more to say about that it's hard for me to really wrap my head around, but there's something about that just like how it speaks to the power of image, and representation, but also the power of the moving image. Seeing that on film, on film and on a big screen, it's in your face. It's like pow, like, and then her stomach is like pow, it's out and it's open. It's like, look at this life force machine. And she's holding a machine. It's a machine gun. It's really wild. So she owned not just that scene. She owned the role. And you remember the heck out of her when she leaves the proceedings. So you have that piece. But she's one of the standouts in this movie. The other standout is easily Sean Penn. Sean Penn turns in one of the most memorable performances that I've seen from him in a lot. He's always memorable. He's always good. This is a distinct performance with the way he walks, the way he moves, facial tics. He's got these idiosyncrasies that are specific to that character. You've seen him built out this character, and he's full three-dimensional, living, breathing person with flaws and like everything. Very good. He's very good. He's awkward. There's even a sense of it, like, and he's disturbing. He's a little bit. He makes you feel unsettled. And to me, I don't know if anyone else saw this, but to me, he was also almost kind of like sensitive, oddly. The movie makes it clear he has feelings for a particular person in this movie. Given the confines of the world he's coming from, he probably shouldn't have feelings for this person, but he does. And it's also there's a little bit of a sweetness to him, oddly, which is weird. It shouldn't be, but this is what came off to me. This is how it read to me. Yeah, he was fantastic. He played a whole range, had a whole spectrum of beats that he hit as this character, and feels super comfortable. Not an ounce of it feels fake. Yeah, Sean Penn is easily going to be nominated for an award at the Academy. However you feel about the Academy, and this is not a secret. I've been sort of sour on the Academy for some time. I always think about George Lucas. He was in a Charlie Rose interview who talked about the Academy. A lot of times has not a real focus on awarding films from the lens of any artistic merit. It usually feels like it's too politicized. It's trying to push an agenda or whatever it is. And I tend to agree with Lucas on some of those issues, because it's like, well, that feels like sometimes the Academy gets it right if you care about that. And then if you don't, then hey, it doesn't matter. But if you do care about the Academy and you're following all this chatter about the awards and stuff, Sean Penn will likely be nominated. It's just undeniable. He was so good. And then lastly, the other really key performance in this movie is Willa, Chase Infinity. She's amazing. I didn't know this was her first film. I understood she did some TV work or whatever it is, but she feels like so natural. You would never guess that this is her first feature situation. She just feels so like she's been around. She's very good, very compelling. She doesn't feel awkward at all. She fits right in with everything that's going on. And then I think, of course, I have to mention Benicio del Toro. Del Toro he's probably one of my favorite characters in this movie, because when I saw him on screen, whenever he was on screen, no matter what else was happening around him, there was complete trust in it. As an audience member, I had complete trust in him that everything would be okay whenever he was on screen. everything's chaotic and everything else. He just has this zen energy about him. He's so calm, and he's just so, no matter what kind of hectic this is going on, he has enough calmness to walk Bob through his space and introduce him to family members, to other people who happen to be staying in the place. It's a really neat sequence, really neat extended sequence, just when you first really get to hang with him. So Benicio del Toro gets, salute from me. He's very good in this movie. I want to take a second to go back to talking about Leonardo DiCaprio for a second. One of the coolest things I think about that we see in this performance is how human he is. He's very human. He's not like this former revolutionary who has to tap back into his roots and then become the hero, whatever it is. I like that he's so pared down. It reminds me a lot of his performance in The Wolf of Wall Street, where things are falling apart for him. And there's a humor in that we see, but there's also something supremely flawed and vulnerable. And that's the thing that I think resonates most for me in his performance. Just as a side, Wolf of Wall Street is another performance where I think he was robbed. He should have won for that year, but that aside, this is a similar performance in that you see him really just embracing the vulnerability of Bob and where he's at. And I like that he's a guy who has been away from the revolution game for so long, and he's been engaged in a lot of drugs and alcohol, whatever, over the years, that his brain is not what it used to be. And I like that it never really he stays in that position. He's behind the 8 ball all the time. And it's easy to root for a guy like that. You want him to try to figure out a way to get through whatever the next obstacle is. And you're that much more heartbroken when he gets trapped in another obstacle he has to get past. So the title of One Battle After Another is so appropriate, particularly for Bob, that it's like, and then the way DiCaprio plays him, it so works. Because he's getting, okay, he gets through one thing barely, and he has to he gets trapped into another thing. He has to get through that. He barely skates through from this, and it's like the whole movie is just this. And it's funny too. Like there's some, and that's the other thing about DiCaprio's performance that is something to note, is that his comic timing is cool. Like I appreciate that. Like you don't really it's not something you get to see often. Obviously, if he's in a movie it's a drama or whatever it is, but this is because it has drama and there's comedy in this movie, genuine comedy, and it works. So again, DiCaprio, there's not a whole lot else you can say about him that hasn't already been said. Of his generation, he's in the top 5, top 10 of those guys. So leading men in his generation. And the other thing I'll say is the movie takes some real risks, and it's not afraid to put its characters, all of the characters, through some real challenges, and then have them deal with the consequences of their actions. And I think that also makes the movie stronger. There isn't like this, it's not a gloss, there is a lot of gloss to this movie, but it's not a glossy Hollywood movie in terms of how it treats its characters. It's very real and something that's very reflective of, honestly, how things are in the world right now, which I think is a factor in why this movie is getting a lot of praise. It's not so much that, it's not only that it's well made. It's tapping into something that's dealing with the real world stuff, particularly if you live in California. There's conversations about immigration and how to manage that, how the country's managing that, how it's not doing a really good job about that. And for people who want to do more, like a lot of Californians feel strongly on these issues. And if you're a Californian who has a rebel sort of spirit, something about the French 75 is going to speak to you in this movie. Also, if you support women's rights and if you're pro-choice when it comes to having babies and stuff like that, it's not a huge piece of the movie, but it is mentioned. And for instance, some of you know this about me. I worked at a maternal health agency for a number of years, and again, I was the only male there for a long time, around all women, and our work was around childbirth injuries. And a lot of women, we had a lot of people talking about we worked not far from there was a Planned Parenthood office, right up the street from where we worked. So this is the kind of thing that would have been a huge conversation in the office. And when you think about, in the wake of, the Roe versus Wade and all that stuff. It's kind of a deal, and so I think that's another piece. Just the mention of it in the movie is enough to spark conversation, to get people talking, and it's a big deal. So again, you're going to be on the side of the French 75, even though you may not agree with their actions. You certainly agree with where they're coming from. They tried to do things the judicial way and follow the rules and follow the law and everything, but because things are not working out in their favor, they take matters into their own hands, and it means they have to blow up buildings. They have to do things to make sure that they're heard. The energy of that, I think, is why this movie is getting a lot of conversation. Look, at the end of the day, the awards conversation is a part of the conversation of this movie, and like it or not, and because it's so recent, this is around, I think this is pretty much Oscar season right now. So movies coming out from here on in are going to be towards the end of the year are going to be in conversation for best picture, best director, all those things. Personally, I think it's going to come down to Sinners and One Battle After Another. Really, the other movies are great as well. They're going to be are in the conversation, but I think when it comes down to it, it's those two movies. And it's kind of wild because it seems like the early part of this year there was so much conversation around Sinners, people who went to go see it multiple times, and it made a killing at the box office and all these things. And then it was re-released. It came out, and and then when streaming hit, it was a whole other conversation. Now, One Battle After Another is dominating the conversation, and we'll see what's happening. I think all of us have an idea. I have a couple of friends that I've been following who are tracking this and having deeper conversations about this. And I think most of them are pretty spot on that it's between One Battle After Another right now is the front runner, sort of projected, and then Sinners is number 2, and then there's a whole situation where you fall in the conversation is I'd be interested to know if you have some thoughts about that. Bottom line is, One Battle After Another is a movie that's worth your time. It's very good. I think it's worth a look. Having said that, there are going to be some people there are people already I know who actually don't like this movie or don't think it's Paul Thomas Anderson's best work. And that's okay too. And if you're one of those, I would love to hear what one of his movies you think is the best. I'm curious about that, genuinely. I think right now Boogie Nights it's like the top for a lot of people, or it's between that and There Will Be Blood. There's a few of Paul Thomas Anderson's work. Oh, and Phantom Thread is another one I need to see. So I still have several of his works that I need to see, but I'd be curious to know what you think. If you've made it to the end of this video, thank you. I appreciate your time. And with that, I'm getting out of here. So take it easy. Have a good afternoon. And I'll see you in the next video. Get ready for more spooky stuff on the way.